So recently it's been announced that Kevin De Bruyne is leaving Manchester City, and rightly so. Everyone's praising him. Everyone's saying, oh, you know, Premier League legend, one of the best players to ever do it. Some are even calling him the greatest Premier League midfielder ever. However, a YouTuber I like to watch called Rants and Bants, he's been criticising Kevin De Bruyne for, you know, leaving Man City this early, because he argues that Kevin De Bruyne's longevity should be the same as, you know, guys like Modric, guys like Scholes, guys like Pirlo. You know, these are guys who at the start of their careers were advanced midfielders, you know, at 20 years old, 25, 30. But as soon as they got to like 32, 33, they sort of dropped back and played that deep line playmaker role, you understand? And then they carried on playing until 35, 36, 37, 38. They kept playing at a top level for a very long time. You look at Luka Modric now, this guy, he's still, you know, bossing it for Real Madrid. He can still play at this top level for the biggest club in the world at 39, 40. And basically, Rance was saying that KDB shouldn't be, you know, on his decline this early, because Kevin De Bruyne right now, he's 33 years old, and it's rumored that he's going to go to, you know, Saudi Arabia or the MLS. And Rance was saying that, you know, people are calling KDB this great player. However, he argues that if he really was this great player, that he would still be starting games for Man City. Even when Rodri got injured, he said that if Kevin De Bruyne was really a great player like that, he would be playing in that deep line playmaker role, you understand? Sort of just reinventing himself at the end of his career, when, you know, his athleticism is sort of way. So that's Rance's argument, that, you know, KDB isn't really up there with, you know, guys like Modric, guys like Cesc Fabregas, Scholes, Pirlo, and basically he was saying that his longevity should be better. So today I'm going to teach you how to increase your longevity as a footballer. So the first point into having longevity as a footballer are the fundamentals and the technicals. Because when you look at all the players that age gracefully, it's always the technical players. It's always the ones who always just had a crisp first touch, always just had a great technique in terms of passing the ball or maybe even striking the ball. It's always the ones that just knew the basics of, you know, scanning the pitch. They had great awareness. I think of guys like Modric. Obviously, I know Messi's playing in the MLS right now, but let's be real. If Messi wanted to come back to Barcelona, if he wanted to play in Europe, he could still play in that number 8 role. He could still, you know, create boss games. Pirlo, Scholes, all of these guys, you know, they all had the fundamentals on lock. The fundamentals I'm talking about, you know, being able to pass at different passing ranges, the first touch, the multiple different types of touches they can take, their spatial awareness, all of these simple fundamental things. These are the things where, as you age, that you don't lose it, you understand? As you age, you might lose pace, you might lose agility, you might lose that sharpness, you understand? But you don't lose certain things. You don't lose that ability to strike the ball. You don't lose that that ability to take a great first touch and set yourself up for your next action. You don't lose that ability to, you know, check your shoulders and just have spatial awareness, knowing when to play in 2 touches, 1 touch, knowing when to turn on your back foot, knowing when to take the ball on your front foot, you understand? So these are the things that help players age gracefully. If you look at, you know, the players that don't really age gracefully, it's always the athletes who were subpar technically, you understand? Like, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but right now, I'm in football, I look at a lot of players and I think, when they get to like 28, 29, how are they going to age? You know, how are they going to evolve and adapt their game? Maybe even if they get an injury, maybe it's an ACL, or God forbid, maybe it's like an Achilles tear or something, just a serious injury. Obviously, you don't wish injury upon anybody, but let's say it does happen and, you know, it takes a hit to their athleticism. You're looking at their game and you're thinking, damn, like, how will they adapt? Like, the guy that's coming to my head is Rafael Leao. Guys like Rafael Leao, Marcus Rashford as well. You know, these are guys where, you know, their athleticism, their pace and their athleticism are big parts of their game, you understand? I sort of feel this way about Kylian Mbappe as well. You know, Kylian Mbappe, he has a lot of great attributes, don't get it wrong. Mbappe, you know, he's got that shot that he whips into the near post. He's got good facets to his game, but it's heavily reliant on that athleticism. So when these guys like Leao, Rashford, and Mbappe, when they get to like when they start hitting 30, you're going to look at them and you're going to be like, alright, cool, how can they adapt their game? You understand? Because their games as of today, heavily reliant on their pace and their athleticism, especially like a guy like Leao. To be honest, he's one of my favourite players to watch. You know, when Leao's on it, when he's actually engaged, when he's getting the ball and he's just driving at people, it's just lovely to watch. You know, just him taking the ball, just taking a big touch out, and him just galloping, you know what I'm saying? He's just there and he's just galloping and he's just running away from his fullback. It's beautiful, you understand? But there's a lot to be looked at his game in terms of his technical ability. You know, his finishing's a bit inconsistent. You know, he takes very heavy touches. You know, I don't really see him. Sometimes he'll get the ball and it's a bit of a heavy touch, but his athleticism, because of his athleticism, even if the ball goes 2 yards away from him, he's got them long legs and he can sort of recover a bad first touch. But as that athleticism starts to wane, how is he gonna, how is that going to affect him? Suddenly you're going to see him, losing the ball a lot more. The same as Marcus Rashford. To be fair with Rashford has got a good strike on him. He does have that knuckleball, but he doesn't really have anything else. You know what I'm saying? I've seen Rashford, knuckleball corners and stuff like that, and I'm thinking, damn, like, I'm saying the knuckleball's nice, but he needs to add some variety to their game. Obviously, you got certain guys certain positions like a winger and a fullback. Obviously, you need to have athleticism in the first place, really to really thrive in those areas. You look at all the best fullbacks, they're in the modern day especially, they're all quick. Alphonso Davies, Hakimi. Obviously when Kyle Walker like 2 years ago, you look at all these guys and you're thinking, yeah, you need athleticism to really strive in that position. However, there's certain other things that you can sort of develop in your game that you don't necessarily need pace for. One of my key criticisms about Kyle Walker was that, even though he made those recovery runs, even though he made those challenges, even though there were games where he did lock up a guy like Vinicius Junior. There's been too many times where I've seen Kyle Walker, he's sleeping. A winger will make a run in behind him, and he needs to thank God for his pace, because luckily, because he's so quick, he's been able to recover. You know what I'm saying? There's been times where he's just been sleeping, he's let his man go, but because he's so quick, he can recover and make that challenge. However, once that pace started to decline, once that pace started to slowly go down in like the last year/18 months, you've sort of seen him get exposed a little bit. You see, obviously everyone knows the Timo Werner one, where Werner just says, I'm just going to kick it and run, and Walker couldn't get to it. And then one I remember specifically was against Newcastle. I think it was Newcastle away. I don't remember the scoreline, but I think twice, I think one it was Anthony Gordon and then one it was Isaac, where they both made runs into Walker's channel. Walker was sleeping. His positional awareness for me has always been questionable, you understand, but he was sleeping, and obviously he tried to get back in, but obviously Gordon and Isaac, they just got the ball, just cut inside and just wrapped it into the bottom far corner. I remember that game vividly. I'm thinking, people were criticizing Kyle Walker that game, but I was thinking, I've watched Man City plenty of times. He's always been like this, but his pace has just got him out of jail. And that's what I'm saying with longevity. You have to have you can't rely on that physical ability. The players who are the most graceful in terms of their aging are the ones who just have those fundamentals, just the awareness, the ones who can think two or three steps ahead. You understand? The ones who, like I said, technicals, fundamentals, the first touch, the way of pass, the technique when striking the ball. These are all just things that, in my opinion, you as a young player, you just need to work on. If it's your first touch, literally just do ball passing, different types of ball passes, in the air, close range, left foot, right foot, one touch. Take the practice touches on your instep, touches on your outstep, touches both feet. Practice turning with your back foot. Just little things like this. You need a good first touch. You understand? And yes, a technique of striking the ball. Especially if you're an attacker, practice just striking of the ball, because once you lose that pace, once you lose that athleticism, maybe you're not able to run the channels as much. So you're gonna have to focus on just really just striking the ball, edge of the box, and just striking the ball. Think of a guy like Lewandowski. Lewandowski, he's like 36, but he's bagged 40 goals. In the box, he just knows where to be. You understand? Remember the Champions League goal the other day where Lamine crossed it into the box, Rafinha headed it across. Lewandowski was just there. You understand? He was just there. Or I think there was another time against Atletico Madrid. He just got it on the edge of the box. I think he got on the edge of the box. He took a touch with the outside of his right foot, and he just struck it into the bottom corner with his left. That's one of them things where you don't lose that. He might have lost a bit of pace, a bit of athleticism, but you don't lose that. You don't lose sort of that instinct, that technique of striking the football. So that's the first point. Literally, just focus on the fundamentals, the technical aspects that you don't lose. Like I said, the first touch. The technique when striking the ball, the way of passing, the range of passing, spatial awareness, reading of the game, being 2-3 steps ahead. Work on these sort of things, and trust me, you're more likely to age gracefully as a footballer. And then the other thing I would suggest is just take care of your body. Literally just take care of your body. Just do what's right for your body. I know as a young player, it's tough to, you know, have the discipline to, you know, eat clean all the time, or maybe have the discipline to, you know, come up with a stretching routine after training. You know, you come back from training and you're just tired. You're just like, oh, I can't be arsed, you know, I've just had a long training session. I don't really want to stretch. Maybe you have like your little 15-minute stretching routine, but you come back from training, you're tired. I've been there my damn self, where it's like, I just can't be asked to do this. Like, let me just go to bed. Let me just rest up and recharge. However, it's those sort of disciplines that separate, you know, the best players, how they take care of their body. You understand? Obviously, you can't be like CR7 yet, where, you know, CR7, he has the saunas, he has the ice baths, he has the what do they call them things where they, it's like when they get buried and they zip it up on people, like the hyperbolic time chamber or something. I don't even know what it's called, but yeah, you obviously don't have these sort of, you know, recovery devices yet as a young player. However, just do your best to take care of your body as a footballer, because I know as a young player, you know, you can get away with, you know, eating junk food, you can get away with, you know, maybe drinking alcohol, and it doesn't affect your body. However, I know it won't affect your body, but it affects the habits. And once you actually get to that age where you look at yourself and you're going to be like, alright, cool, I actually need to, you know, cut out the junk food, cut out the snacks, cut out the alcohol. It's going to be way harder for you because you've just made it a habit. You've got that into a routine. However, if you're at a young age, you tell yourself, alright, cool, I'm going to try my best to eat clean. I don't have to be perfect all the time, but I'm gonna try my best to, you know, eat clean 5 days a week. You know what I'm saying? At least 4-5 days a week, and then maybe we can increase it to 6, and then maybe we can increase it to I'll just have a cheat meal once every 2 weeks. You understand? Just start off small. You don't have to be perfect, but just start off small. You understand? Start stretching as well. That's another thing with guys. I've seen it with guys, you know, 12, 13, 14, you don't really get muscle pulls at that age. But once you hit like 15, 16, that's when you start seeing certain guys holding their hamstrings, you know, during games, holding their calves. I remember I started getting, you know, cramps in my calves at like 16 years old. I didn't even know, the first time I ever got a proper cramp during a game, bro, I didn't even know what was going on. I thought I tore my Achilles or something. I was like, yo, that pain, the first time I ever felt it was crazy. I did not know what was going on. I genuinely thought, yo, I'm done. And then another time happened where I got cramp in my quad. I thought I tore my quad. I was like, yo, what is this? What's going on? But yeah, obviously with cramping and stuff, that's more, you know, hydration. I was probably dehydrated during the match, but it still ties into, you know, just taking care of your body. Understand? You don't have to be perfect as a young player. You don't really have the facilities, but just try your best. You know what I'm saying? Just try your best to do anything, because let's be honest, you know, you have common sense to know, okay, what's not going to help me as a footballer, what's going to deter me as a footballer, what's actually going to harm my chances of being a footballer. Like, you know, instinctively. I don't have to go over every single thing. You just know. So the second one is just to take care of your body as much as you can. And obviously this will probably allow you to you know, be more athletic for longer. You understand? So like a guy like CR7, let's take for example, he probably didn't start declining seriously physically. Obviously he got the knee injury when he was like 29, but even at like 31, 32, he was still, you know, he still had the ability to, you know, make runs in the channel. You understand? It wasn't the same as, you know, Man United CR7, but he still had that ability after that knee injury at Real Madrid. He still had the ability to, you know, make runs in behind, use his pace, use that burst of acceleration to, you know, do what he needs to do, whether that's score a goal, create a chance for another player, whatever he needs to do. And he still, you know, managed to play at the top level until, what was it, like 36, 37. Even now he's still in Saudi. You still look at him and he's in great shape. You know what I'm saying? He's in great shape. Still not the player he once was, but hey, he's still, you know, making money. He's still probably the best player in that league. So it goes to show that it pays off. And he's probably been doing this, you know, the recovery things, taking care of his body since the Man United days. You know what I'm saying? Since the Man United days, since he had them blonde highlights in his hair, since he had the cracked teeth. You know what I'm saying? The cracked teeth, the acne. He's been doing all of this, and it's paid off in the end. So yeah, literally that's the second one, to just take care of your body. But that's been the video for today on how to increase your longevity as a young footballer. I hope you enjoyed. I've been JT, and I'm out.